"Oh, Samantha, how could you have become so evil? This is bad. So bad. I am not perfect, but this is beyond anything I could imagine," Cassie muttered as she placed the envelope on her desk. Samuel was devastated. He felt as though his opportunity to go to the university had been ripped away from him. Sonia, filled with so much sympathy for him, continued searching the house, but it was to no avail. Samuel went to school the next day, dragging his feet with sadness. His heart was heavy with bitterness. He sat alone in the school cafeteria, lost in thoughts. After school, he walked home slowly, trying to think where he could have misplaced the form. As he turned onto his street, he noticed a crowd gathered in front of their house. Alarmed, he rushed towards the commotion and saw their home engulfed in flames. His eyes widened as he scanned the crowd for Auntie Sonia. When he found her, she was on the ground, sobbing uncontrollable, with neighbors holding her back. The fire brigade had been called, but they haven't arrived yet. Someone said urgently. "Auntie, where is Samantha?" Samuel asked, his voice filled with dread. "She's inside," Sonia cried. I ran out thinking she would follow, but the fire spread too fast. Adrenaline surged through Samuel's body. Without thinking, he sprinted towards the house. The people around him weren't fast enough to stop him as he broke through the smoky air and rushed into Samantha's room. There she was, unconscious on the floor. The fire was closing in. Samuel quickly scooped her up and ran back the way he came, coughing but determined. Luckily, the fire hadn't fully consumed the part of the house yet. Only smoke filled the air. Outside, he laid Samantha on the ground, coughing and gasping for air, just as the fire brigade finally arrived and began extinguishing the flames. Not long after, Mr. Martins returned home. Without waiting for an ambulance, they rushed Samantha to the hospital. As they drove, Sonia kept thanking Samuel for saving her life. At the hospital, both Samantha and Samuel were checked over. The doctor assured Mr. Martins and Sonia that Samuel would be fine after some rest, while Samantha was in shock but had only minor injuries. It would take a few weeks to repair the damages in the house, but otherwise, things would be fine. The next morning, Mr. Martins received a phone call from the school informing him that Samuel was late for his scholarship exam. He rushed to tell Samuel the news. Surprised, Samuel wondered, "Who submitted my form?" Though puzzled, he quickly got ready and headed to the exam room. He answered all the questions to the best of his ability, despite not having reversed his books. Meanwhile, Samantha woke up after hours of sleep. She turned to find her mother sitting beside her. "Samantha, you are awake. Do you feel any pain?" Sonia asked softly. Samantha shook her head. Sonia called the doctor, who checked her vitals and confirmed she was improving. He instructed Sonia to get her some food so she could take her medication. "Sammy, darling, you need to thank Samuel. He risked his life to save you. He didn't think about his own safety. He ran into that fire and carried you out. He's such a good boy. God bless him," Sonia said, her voice filled with emotion. At these words, Samantha began to cry. "I'm so sorry, Mommy." "What are you talking about? I'm telling you to thank Samuel, and here you are apologizing. What's going on, Samantha?" Sonia asked, a frown creasing her face. I I took Samuel's scholarship form and I burned it, Samantha sobbed. What? Samantha, are you serious? Are you hallucinating? Sonia asked in shock. No, mommy. It's true. I burned the form. Samantha cried harder. My God. Why, Samantha? Why would you do that? Sonia demanded, horrified. Mommy, I was just jealous, Samantha admitted, tears streaming down her face. Jealous of what? Sonia shouted, her voice rising in anger. I'm sorry, Mommy, Samantha whimpered. It's not me you should apologize to. It's Samuel. And what good will your apology do now? He missed his exam because of you, Sonia yelled, unable to contain her frustration. Sonia was furious, unable to grasp how far Samantha had fallen. The golden watch, Mommy, Samantha began again. What about the watch? Sonia asked, sensing more to the story. I took the watch and gave it to Samuel, telling him Daddy said it was for him. I wanted to get him into trouble so he would leave our house, Samantha confessed, her voice barely a whisper. Samantha, Sonia gasped. I can hardly recognize you. What have you become? You watched him suffer and you said nothing. What else have you done to him? Samantha sobbed uncontrollably. I don't want to hear any more, Sonia said, walking out of the room disgusted. She felt ashamed of her daughter, but couldn't help but feel gratitude towards Samuel, who had risked his life to save Samantha despite all the wrong she had done. If it had been anyone else, they would have let her burn, Sonia thought. 2 days later, Samantha and Samuel were discharged from the hospital and Mr. Martins picked them up. Those 2 days had been the hardest of Sonia's life, but she chose to wait until they were home to address the issue with her husband, fearing his reaction. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room. Samuel was about to excuse himself when Mr. Martins called him back. Samantha has something to say, he announced. Samantha spoke in a quiet voice. Thank you, Samuel, for saving my life. And I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, Samuel. Please forgive me, she cried. What have you done? Mr. Martins asked sternly. I burned Samuel's scholarship form. I stole the wristwatch and gave it to him to implicate him. I bullied him at school, she admitted slowly, her voice trembling with guilt. As her confession hung in the air, Mr. Martin's face darkened with anger. He stood up abruptly and slapped her, his wife rushing to hold him back, begging him not to hit her again. Furious, he stormed out of the room, unwilling to trust himself in that moment. Samantha turned to Samuel, tears streaming down her face. Please, Samuel, I am so sorry. Please, forgive me, she begged. Samuel looked at her with cold, unreadable eyes. Samantha, give me some time to process all this. By the way, I have already written my scholarship exam. The school called me on the day of the exam. I don't know who submitted the form, but I am grateful, he said, turning to Sonia. Auntie, may I be excused? He asked politely. Yes, my son, she replied softly. Sonia then turned to Samantha. Everyone is angry at you. You need to reflect deeply on your actions and how they have hurt not just Samuel, but others as well. With that, Sonia left the room, leaving Samantha alone to hide her face in her hands and cry. Guilt and shame weighed heavily on her heart. For days, she didn't go to school, and her parents didn't force her. They knew she needed time to confront her behavior. At school, Samuel was putting his books in his locker when he felt a light tap on his shoulder. He turned around and saw someone familiar. It was Cassie. She smiled at him, but he looked at her in confusion. "How can I help you?" he asked politely. She bit her lip, lowering her head shyly. "It's me," she said softly. "It's you. What do you mean?" Samuel asked, not understanding. "It's me, your anonymous admirer," she confessed, her voice barely audible. Samuel was taken aback. "Are you playing with me? You are Cassie, Samantha's best friend. Did she send you?" he asked wearily. "No, she didn't. I haven't spoken to her in days," Cassie replied, shaking her head. "I have always liked you, Samuel. Didn't you notice that I stopped doing the things Samantha does? I'm not like her anymore," she said, her voice filled with hope. Samuel hesitated. "That doesn't change anything. I am poor and you are rich. We don't belong together," he said bluntly. "Samuel, please, let me be your friend. I really do like you. Maybe in the future we could be more," Cassie pleaded. Samuel studied her for a moment. She was beautiful and she had been kind recently. "Okay," he said finally, "but on one condition. You must apologize to everyone you have bullied in the past." "That's easy. I will do it," Cassie agreed eagerly. "How did your exams go?" she asked. "Wait, how did you know about that?" Samuel asked, his eyes narrowing. You submitted my form?" Cassie smiled and nodded. "Yes, I did." Samuel's face lit up. "Thank you so much, Cassie. You saved my life," he exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. When they pulled apart, Cassie beamed at him, waving goodbye as she walked away. Samuel smiled after her, unable to believe what had just happened. Later during lunch break, Cassie apologized to everyone she had wronged, and to her surprise, they all forgave her. She even began mingling with some of them, laughing and chatting freely. Samuel sat at his seat, feeling happiness bubbled up inside him. He glanced over at Cassie, who shyly bowed her head when she caught his eye. As the days passed, Samantha continued trying to earn Samuel's forgiveness, but he avoided her whenever he could. She even begged her mother to help her, but Sonia told her, "This is your mess to clean up." In an attempt to make amends, Samantha offered to make dinner one evening, something she rarely did. Everyone gathered to eat, and after they had finished, Samantha once again pleaded for Samuel's forgiveness. "I have forgiven you, Samantha. There is no point in holding grudges when the truth is already out," he said. Samantha smiled widely, thanking him. The next day, Samantha returned to school. She looked for her best friend Cassie, who was happy to have her back. Samantha thanked Cassie for not burning the form, knowing that single act had saved her from her father's wrath. "See, Samantha, we are not kids anymore. Soon we will be heading to the university. We can't keep acting with such childish behavior," Cassie said. "It brings no good, and I think you should think twice before hurting people's emotions. Just like you, they feel too. We are all humans. If something bothers you at home or anywhere else, talk to your parents about it. They can explain their actions to you. Please, Samantha, remember that." "Cassie, you sound like a grown-up," Samantha replied with a smile. "But I have heard you. I will try to be better." After a while, Cassie saw Samuel and excused herself to talk to him. As she approached, Samuel smiled, and they intertwined their hands, Samantha observing the scene from a distance, confused by what she was saying. "What's going on?" she asked herself, puzzled. Samuel and Cassie spent their lunch break in the school garden, talking and laughing. Samuel enjoyed Cassie's company. He loved her smile, her warmth, and the way she cared for him. It softened his heart even more. Meanwhile, Samantha couldn't stop thinking about how close her best friend had become with Samuel. She'd followed them discreetly and watched as they laughed together. A sudden wave of emotion hit her. Jealousy, anger, she wasn't sure. Am I jealous of Cassie for making Samuel laugh? Or am I angry at Samuel for taking my best friend away? She wondered, trying to calm herself. Maybe I should join them, she thought, taking a deep breath. Samantha approached them with a hopeful smile. Hey, I would like to join you guys. Hope you don't mind, she asked. Samuel and Cassie exchanged a glance. We were just about heading inside, Cassie said awkwardly. Maybe next time? Okay, Samantha replied. But she knew they were leaving because of her. What are you up to, Cassie? She thought. Over the next few days, Samantha and Cassie continued to talk as they always did. But whenever Samantha brought up Samuel, Cassie would avoid the topic or change the subject. Meanwhile, Samuel and Cassie spent more time together, clearly enjoying each other's company. As Samantha observed them, she started to notice things about Samuel she hadn't noticed before. His bright smile, his deep voice, and how caring he was towards Cassie. She watched him carry Cassie's lunch and be thoughtful in ways she hadn't imagined. Am I developing a crush on him? No, Samantha, you can't do this, she told herself. But as the days passed, her feelings grew stronger. She couldn't explain what was happening, but she found herself staring at him at home, lost in thought. Each time, Samuel didn't even notice her. He was either focused on his tasks or smiling at his phone. If I like him, it's not a problem, right? He's not my brother, she reasoned. Determined, she took some of her savings and told her mother she wanted to buy a gift for Samuel as a gesture of apology. Her mother gave her a strange look. But he has already forgiven you, Samantha. Why do you need a gift? Sonia asked. I just want to make sure, Samantha replied. Okay, Samantha, I like that you have changed and are ready to accept Samuel as part of the family. But Samantha didn't want Samuel as family. She wanted him as her boyfriend. The thought made her blush. Her mother accompanied her to the mall and they picked out a nice watch for Samuel. Samantha smiled at the thought of him accepting her gift. She kept it, waiting for the perfect moment to give it to him. One Saturday morning, Mr. Martins and Sonia left the house for a wedding ceremony. Samuel was sitting on the couch, watching a movie, when Samantha interrupted him. She sat beside him, smiling, and handed him the gift box. Samuel, I want to say I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me and accept this gift, she said. Samuel looked at her puzzled. But I have already forgiven you, Samantha. I promise I have nothing against you, he replied, not taking the gift. But you have barely spoken to me since that day. Please, I insist, take this gift, she urged. Samuel reluctantly opened the gift and glanced at the watch inside. Samantha, I can't accept this. I don't deserve it, he said. Okay, if you say so, but please accept this gift as a token of my love to you. Love? Samantha, I can't promise you anything. Please, he said as he walked away. Samantha was left sitting there, stunned. Why did he reject my gift? Why did he reject me, she wondered. Determined to get closer to him, She tried different approaches, inviting him to watch movies or offering to go to school together, but Samuel kept his distance, always finding an excuse. He even talked to Cassie about it, but she just laughed. Samantha always had an eye for good things, Cassie said. It's a shame she didn't notice you before I did. Now that you are giving me attention, she wants you. Soon, it was time for their WAEC exams, and everyone was busy preparing. Samantha insisted on studying with Samuel, and sometimes he obliged. This routine continued until the exam finally arrived, and after a few weeks, they were over. While waiting for his result, Samuel received a call from the scholarship board. They informed Mr. Martins that Samuel had passed his exam and would be awarded the scholarship. Mr. Martins was overjoyed and organized a small family celebration to honor Samuel's success. When Samuel heard the news, he was filled with happiness. He called his father to share the good news, and his family rejoiced on his behalf. Samuel invited Cassie to the celebration, knowing he owed much of his success to her. They had dinner, and Mr. Martins took them all to the movies. It was a fun evening for the family except for Samantha. Throughout the night, she couldn't stop giving Cassie strange looks. The way Cassie clung to Samuel's arm irritated her, but she knew better than to cause a scene. She tried to distract herself by focusing on her phone, avoiding looking at Samuel and Cassie. Later that night, she called Cassie, who picked up after the second ring. "Hey Sammy, what's up?" Cassie's cheerful voice greeted her. "I need to have a serious conversation with you," Samantha replied, her tone serious. "Spill," Cassie said. "I like Samuel," Samantha confessed, "and I see how close you are to him. Please give us some space to figure things out." Wow, I don't believe it. The almighty Samantha with a crush. What happened to your ego? Cassie teased. "No, don't answer that," Cassie said, cutting Samantha off. "You have fallen for him, and that's okay. Samuel is a handsome young man, and I don't blame you for liking him. But I don't understand why you are so bothered by my friendship with him. You are free to go after him. No one is stopping you, Samantha," Cassie replied, a hint of mockery in her tone. "Is that all?" Cassie asked. "Yes, that's all," Samantha responded, ending the call. Though Cassie valued her friendship with Samantha, but she wasn't willing to let go of Samuel. Meanwhile, Samuel was preparing to travel abroad for his scholarship. During this time, Cassie visited him and made her feelings clear. "Samuel, do you remember what I told you a few months ago?" she asked, her voice soft but serious. "Yes, Cassie. You told me you liked me," Samuel replied with a smile. "Well, things have changed," she said, looking at him intently. They weren't officially in a relationship, and Samuel wondered if this was the moment she would tell him that she liked someone else or wanted to end whatever they had. "What do you mean, Cassie?" Samuel asked, his smile fading. "I love you, Samuel," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought it was obvious. We might still be young, but I know what I want. I love you, and I want to be with you." "Cassie, I love you too. I promise I will come back for you soon," Samuel replied. They hugged and everything felt right. Soon, Samuel's travel arrangements were completed and he left for overseas. He stayed in touch with everyone except Samantha. He didn't enjoy her company and preferred to keep his distance. As time passed, Samuel became even more handsome. His masculine features became more defined. Many girls approached him, declaring their love, But there was only one person on his mind: Cassie. She brought joy into his life and helped him see the world in a new light. Samantha, in her own word, obsessively followed him on every social media account he had, blushing at every picture he posted. She was desperate for his attention. At university, Samantha would show Samuel's photo to her new friends, claiming he was her fiancé and that they would get married when he returned. Her friends would gush over how lucky she was to have such a handsome man. At the same time, Cassie was in the university as well, rejecting all relationship offers because her heart belonged to one and only Samuel. They stayed in touch, talking for hours and exchanging photos every time. Everything seemed perfect for the young couple, while Samantha continued living in her web of lies. Samuel completed his studies and secured a good job at a prestigious company, while also managing his online business. With this, he was able to build a house for his father. 5 years later, Samuel returned home, ready to marry Cassie. Cassie arrived at the airport to greet him and they shared their first kiss. It felt like fireworks bursting through them. They didn't want to pull away, but they had to. Samuel smiled and Cassie blushed, hiding her face in his chest. They left the airport and Samuel checked into a hotel. They spent the day together, and when night fell, Cassie prepared to leave. Samuel, you know we are not married. It's not proper for me to stay here tonight, she said. Baby, that's why I want to ask you something, Samuel said, pulling out a ring. Will you marry me, Cassie? Will you make me the happiest man alive? She gasped, caught off guard. Yes, Samuel, I will marry you, she said, tears of joy in her eyes as he slipped the ring into her finger. They hugged and kissed, but they saved the best part for later, after their marriage. Samuel begged her to stay a little longer, telling her how much he had missed her. They cuddled and talked throughout the night, making up for the years they had been apart. Samuel was planning to marry Cassie and take her back to the States. Together, they searched for a suitable apartment and found a beautiful place. Samuel also bought a car and visited his family in the village, introducing Cassie as his fiancée. His parents were overjoyed and couldn't wait for their grandchildren. Samuel also bought gifts and visited Mr. Martins and Auntie Sonia, who were thrilled to see him again. When Samantha heard Samuel's voice, she ran out and hugged him tightly, rubbing her body against his. Everyone exchanged knowing looks. Welcome, my son. You have grown into a fine young man, Mr. Martin said. Thank you, sir, Samuel replied. They talked for a while and then Samuel introduced Cassie as his fiancée. Wow, you are getting married. I'm so happy for you, Sonia said, with everyone congratulating them. Finally, Samuel and Cassie together, Samantha muttered under her breath. Her smile forced. It was clear she was faking her happiness. They spent some time together before leaving. Cassie told her parents about Samuel and that he would be visiting for the formal introduction, and they began preparing. A week later, Samuel, accompanied by his family, went to Cassie's home for the traditional introduction ceremony. They set a date for the wedding. Samantha had been in a full mood ever since hearing about Cassie and Samuel's engagement. Cassie was getting married, and I, Samantha, didn't even have a boyfriend. Her friend Stacy noticed her sadness and asked what was wrong. Samantha opened up, telling her everything. So what's the problem? Stacy asked. I love him, Stacy. I want him, but he doesn't even see me. He doesn't want me, Samantha confessed, tears welling in her eyes. No problem. I will help you, Stacy said. I know a Baba who can make him yours, but we need to take Cassie out of the way first so he will notice you. Okay, when do we go? Samantha asked eagerly. Tomorrow morning, no time to waste, Stacy replied. The next morning at 5 a.m., Samantha snuck out of the house to meet Stacy. They traveled for a while into a village and then walked through a narrow bushy path for nearly an hour until they reached a small hut. They removed their shoes before entering. A few minutes later, an old man dressed in worn-out clothes entered and sat down, tossing cowries on the ground. I see. You want him. And he will be yours, the Baba said, as Samantha smiled with anticipation. But you must offer something to Ike to work his wonder for you, he continued. Samantha took out a bundle of 1,000 naira notes and placed it on the ground. Take this powder and put it in her food. She will never wake up, and then the love he has for her will transfer to you, and he will have no other choice but to run to you. But beware, this powder, the food or drink must never touch the ground, or there will be consequences we are not prepared for, he warned. Samantha thanked him and left with Stacy. She felt a rush of excitement knowing she had the means to get rid of Cassie. The only challenge now was how to get Cassie to have lunch with her. Samantha called Cassie's phone, and after a few rings she answered. Hello, Cassie. It's been rough between us the past few years. I'm really happy for you, and I want us to make peace before you become Mrs. Samuel, Samantha said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. What do you have in mind? Cassie asked, sounding weary. Let's have lunch together at Sunny Diner, Samantha suggested. Okay, I will meet you there at 2, Cassie replied, ending the call. Who was that, honey? Samuel asked as Cassie set her phone down. Samantha. She wants to have dinner, Cassie replied. That's strange. Please be careful. I don't trust her at all, Samuel warned. When the time came, Samantha arrived at the diner and waited for Cassie. Soon after, Cassie joined her and they greeted each other politely. They ordered food and Samantha asked for water first. As she sipped her water, she accidentally spilled the drink on Cassie, which was intentional though. Oh, I'm sorry, Cassie, she apologized. It's fine, Samantha. I'll be right back. Let me go and clean myself in the restroom, Cassie said, walking away. As soon as Cassie left, the food was brought, and Samantha quickly poured the powder into her drink and was pouring it into the food, but just as she was about finishing what she started, Cassie returned and caught her in the act. What are you doing? Cassie shouted in horror, startling Samantha. In her panic, the powder fell from her hand and hit the ground. Instantly, everything went black for Samantha. She was blind. Help me! Help me! I can't see, she cried. Cassie rushed to her side, but there was nothing she could do. She quickly called Mr. Martins, who came to the diner and took Samantha home. Samantha was taken to several hospitals, but no doctor could cure her blindness. When they tried to contact Stacy, her phone rang several times before disconnecting. She had changed her number and disappeared. Meanwhile, Samuel and Cassie had an elaborate wedding, and a few weeks later, they traveled abroad to begin their new life together. There are so many lessons to be learned from this story, but I will just give a few. One must be careful of the action one take. Good and bad actions have their own consequences. Anger and jealousy are fertile ground for hate, so one must be very careful of what we allow into our minds. We should never look down on anybody. Anything can change at any time. Please don't forget to go back and watch the part 1 if you haven't watched it yet. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy. Please don't forget to like, comment and share. See you in the next one. Bye.